My name is Regulus, and today I'm interviewing Lon Milo DuQuette. He is an occultist, a fellow occultist, and we are going to be discussing his practice. So I am not I don't have any official, systematic beliefs to what I think and believe for myself. I'm just kind of a go with the flow kind of guy. But I know you've been in the field for quite a bit longer. So how do you practice magic? What works for you? Like, is it like a ritual thing? Is it a
Well, first of all, I'm old, and I've been doing lots of things for the last 75 years, and so I've gotten to the point of where I'm just looking at life as just one big magical operation anyway, and for many years, I sort of practiced the expected disciplines of Western Hermetic magic, Kabbalah-based ceremonial magic. But it's you said you didn't know have a set belief system. Neither do I. The only reason that magic attracted me in the first place is that it's not a belief system. And I'm sorry if people that call themselves magicians think it's a belief system. They're off on the wrong foot. Actually, I was sort of my wife and I both sort of grew up in sort of a 1960s hippie expansion consciousness environment, and that sort of led us into Eastern mysticism and things like that. Most impressed with the philosophy, anyway, of like the Tao Te Ching, Taoist and Buddhist stuff, and very attracted to the kind of technical, brainy stuff of the Upanishads and Hindu mysticism and things like that. It was just sort of the thing to do while you smoked hash in the old days, and but it was a very healthy thing for us as far as seeing the universality of consciousness expansion. And so magic, when I started to look for something that was kind of the equivalent in the Western traditions, because let's face it, Eastern mysticism's hard work.
It is.
And I'm a real lazy person. So and besides, there's this basic difference between the Eastern approach, which is to quiet yourself, go within kind of things to discover that you're everything. But Westerners like to do that same thing. They go on that same quest, but we're sort of hardwired to want to do it on the outside.
Yes, I agree.
And so the Westerners are really into doing all of this inward work outwardly. Okay, so that's why we just love scriptures, and we love playing with wands and swords and stuff like that. We like strutting around in the dark with robes on and bowls of.
What you're saying is that the practice of ritual magic helps the Westerner extrovert their inner work.
I could have said it as fast as you did if I would have thought of it that way. Yeah, absolutely. That's just kind of what it is. And so Kabbalah especially, people think, was that Hebrew? Is that a Jewish thing? Or Well, it is if you want it to be, but it's what it boils right down to is just look hard enough at anything, and you'll eventually see everything. And the Kabbalistic techniques, instead of stripping away all the things that you're not, in order to get to that smooth singularity that everybody's out for. Kabbalistically, you do just the opposite. Instead of stripping stuff away, you connect everything. You connect everything with everything else until there's nothing left to connect. And both ways, stripping down or connecting, both ways you hit a point where you sort of go bingo, and you hit the singularity. And so I was really attracted to the exercises and the techniques behind that kind of magic. And then when I ran into the personality, because he died months before I was born, of Aleister Crowley, I discovered just a wild and crazy and funny and flawed and and obscene and inspiring, and I ran across the characters that, gee, this guy is just so freaking interesting.
Right.
Besides having all of these insights, and obviously he just poured forth a body of almost channeled magical literature. And he had the skills of a poet. Okay, he had all the machinery to give voice to crazy, wonderful things that were going on inside, and not everybody can do that. Okay,
yes.
There's lots of stillborn, babbling mystics on the temple steps that can't really communicate the wonderful things that are going on. And here's a guy that did, and he can do it in English.
Yeah.
And
well, I've noticed English is a very literal language. It works best if you understand what you're describing and can describe, like, English is one-to-one with reality in a way. If you describe something literally, it's a lot easier to do it with English, whereas most Eastern languages use metaphorical reasoning to relate reality to each other. So it's more of like an idea conceptually versus like a literal objective understanding.
Yeah, the Tao Te Ching tries to clear the air on that subject in like its first line. The named, the nameless is the source, but the named is the mother of all of that stuff.
Yes.
And so anyway, once I got a hold of Crowley, and first when you start to get into Crowley, you read the most hideous, terrible, monstrous things about the guy, and if you're superstitious and still operating on the fundamentalist kind of programming of, especially Christianity, when a guy calls himself the Beast 666, it's going to immediately blow everyone away at the cocktail party that still has a superstitious understanding of what that might be, what they are afraid that might be. And it sort of takes a while to get over the zen of somebody that is literally trying to explain what a wonderful spiritual being we all are, and at the same time, just pushing you to the limits of how wide your mind can go to receive that message. And it wasn't like he was, what you would think of as a saint, but he's almost every bit of what you should think of is a prophet. When you look at Old Testament prophets, that's where we get our archetype for that, most people in the West. These guys were jerks. They were
flipping tables.
Well, yeah, flipping tables, and he was the cool among prophets. Prophets are just somebody that is so crazy that they actually see what's going on at the moment on all sorts of spiritual dimensions, and they're not afraid to tell somebody about it. And that's what gets them killed. Okay.
Yes.
I mean, Old Testament prophets, there's one guy that just killed a bunch of kids because they made fun of his haircut. And Crowley sort of fits in there. Prophets aren't saints. Prophets aren't nice guys. Prophets aren't bound by the same rules or restrictions of what proper folks think of as morality. None of the Old Testament prophets were what
that brings to mind for me is the Übermensch from Nietzsche's philosophical arguments, is the man who can supersede morality with his own inner being.
Right, and at first that sounds terrible, like, oh, I'm above that. No, I'm around that. It's not an above thing, but it's absolutely true. And if a person is being true to themselves while not being afraid to announce the truth as they see it, they're bound. They're just cruising for a bruising as far as the rest of society is concerned.
I would say mainstream society, at least, because there is the pockets of niche people like us that do appreciate these people's truths rather than what they've been programmed to respond with.
Right. And so the Crowley became very, very important, sort of like a pole star of a relatively recent Westerner that at least part of his life gained a significant level of illumination and has left us a body of work that can at least point the way of how you and me might be able to do that in our own way.
So do you think the marriage of Western and Eastern philosophies was the beginning point of the left-hand path for our Western culture in a way?
There are different definitions of left-hand, right-hand path, okay? But I think the concept that you're thinking of, I would say yes. Yes, okay. Just like there's different views of what black magic is and white magic is. The thing is, I don't like, and I don't use the term myself because it immediately draws you into a world of duality. And truly, there ain't one. Okay. Just like just like this outward inward thing we were talking about a moment ago. That's just the technique to get to a 0 point. Even oneness, even the singular, even the oneness is sort of like a pimple on the nose of the greatness of 0. You know, even that's why in Kabbalah, they have a 3-part nothing.
Yeah.
Which I just love. This 3-part nothing that out of which one comes. And then creation as we know it is an attempt of this one breaking itself into many to enjoy the adventure of all the parts.
Yes.
And but in the Kabbalah, they said, oh, it's got to come from a 0 first. That's why the Fool card is labeled number 1 in tarot, or labeled number 0 in tarot.
I understand where you were coming from with the duality. I was thinking along the lines of the Eightfold Path of Buddhism, where there's many different ways to end with the same result, but the left and the right hand are the traditional Western views of enlightenment. And I know there's the middle way as well, but that's the one we don't talk about. You know, like.
Right. Well, even saying middle assumes that there's a right and a left. that you're going up. You know, if your idea of good is still so limited that there's room for an opposite, then maybe your good isn't good enough. And if your idea of God is still so limited that there can be room in your universe for an opposite that is evil, then your good isn't good enough.
I agree. I think that this is something that we a trap we fall into, especially in society where we are taught that we are supposed to live upon a certain code of conduct, and people who don't follow this code of conduct are evil. They're the outcasts of society, and so we end up segregating things into good or bad things in our minds to try to conform to the status quo. But when we take away the status quo, when we try to live to be true to ourselves and to share our whole truth with the world, we can see that there is no good and evil in God. God is both. Because in essence, when all is one, one is nothing. Because there is no way to separate it.
Right. And you know, if you'd call it the path of magic, which I don't like that term either. It's only in reference to what particular techniques you're using at any given time to help you wake up at least one step higher. That's why that diagram of the tree of life, you know, the 10 circles with the 22 paths, it is a very it's not perfect, but it's a very good way to sort of organize your idea. And I like the first 3 of those circles or emanations. It's like a triangle up apex pointing upwards. The top circle is the singularity, and it's almost, we can almost wrap our meat brains around a singularity that beyond which, I mean, everything would just back your camera up to get the widest angle view of existence. And there's nothing beyond that. Okay, but that nothing is a capital N, you know. There's nothing beyond that. And so it's sort of easy for us to think about that. But the fact that it can even be thought about, and that we have even language betrays us, because we say there's nothing beyond that. Yeah, there's nothing. And that nothing is something very special.
Yes.
But anyway, just say there's a singularity.
Would you say instead of the word nothing, perhaps there's emptiness beyond that, or the void? Something a little more easily relatable?
Yeah, that's easily relatable and easily misunderstood by people that would say, "Oh man, you believe like nothing. Oh, you got to believe in something, otherwise you'll just be evil." You know? But anyway, the one is doing fine right now. Okay, time doesn't enter into any of this. The one is just doing fine right now. Okay, but it didn't need to do anything. But in our fragmented little bits of consciousness that is somehow in that limitless potentiality of that one doing fine, we have to think of things. We look around and there's lots of stuff. And there's other monads, other units of consciousness around you. You know, it seems like you and me are talking to each other, but we're really talking to ourselves here.
Yes.
Okay.
That's something I say all the time, is when we speak, we're listening.
Yeah. Yep. And so the Kabbalistic story is the one was so one-like, it didn't even need to be self-aware. I mean, if it was or tried to be self-aware, it would ruin its cool oneness suit.
Yes.
But for some reason, it insisted. It never stopped being one. We have to make this story up. It insisted it needed to be self-aware, so it had to ask, well, what the hell am I? And that was the first reflection. Okay.
The first emanation.
Yeah. And so that was like number 2. And number 2 isn't really a number. It's just number 1 reflecting itself.
Yes.
And when number 1 saw number 1's reflection, just like when you and me go to into the bathroom in the morning and look at ourselves in the mirror, we'd go, oh, that's what I am. Boy, am I really big, or boy, am I really small, or whatever it is, that's what I am. But the realization of that's what I am creates the third condition. That, oh, that's what I am. Oh, but I am, and it's not.
Yes. You have to look in the mirror to see yourself, and then you see yourself as what you saw in the mirror rather than as you are. So
you can't have 2 without 3. Okay, the 3 is that, oh, there's a difference between that and I. But 1, 2, and 3 aren't 3 numbers. Okay, they're just one thinking about itself.
Yes.
And so they call that the supernal triad, and that's every religion's trinity of your choice. Because Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, you could project everybody everybody has a trinity that's really uh, transcendent. Our meat brains can't really wrap ourselves around that. And that the rest of the tree of life, that's a trinity unit. And then that whole unit reflects itself. And then again, okay, it follows that same pattern until we get so low on the tree of life that there actually appears to be lots of stuff.
Yes. Do you think that like the source, like inspiration for magical practice is a like knowledge of self then? Like to become self-aware in a true like of the true self rather than to be held down by the illusions of society and the rules and the systems that are placed upon us that are institutionalized. Instead, we get to see the raw, unfiltered version of what it is to be a existing, living being.
Oh, absolutely. And uh, in a sense, enlightenment, illumination, whatever you want to call it, is us taking the responsibility of reversing that climb up the tree of life. Okay. And the very, very first thing, just like one initially reflected itself, okay, just to become self-aware, okay. We're so far down on the tree, the normal kind of mammal consciousness that we're dealing with, that we don't know who we are. And there is a level of consciousness that the Kabbalists associate with number 6, right in the middle of that tree of life thing. And the yogis would say, oh, it's the heart chakra area. Okay. The lower consciousness really has to get married to that number 6.
Yes.
Otherwise, the lower consciousness doesn't even know who it is. Just like number 1 didn't know who it was until it reflected. And so the Hindus look at that as, well, let's systematically and in a balanced way get that heart chakra going, because until we do that, we're not a complete something.
So for me, the 666 mantra of the beast and 6 itself is a symbolic representation of being primal, or the primal self. And what that means to me is that as animals, fundamentally we are animals before anything. We have to become aware of our instinctual, like how we would react instinctually to situations and so on and so forth. And once we get to that point, we can understand that enlightenment comes from being able to supersede our like impulses and to become self-controlling in a way that we are able to act in ways that no one else has acted before, or in ways that are beyond what an animal might normally act like.
Right. We're no longer guided by the nepish or the animal soul needs and requirements. Not that we run away from them, not that we flush them down the toilet or leave them behind or are ashamed of them or afraid of them. We have to integrate. We have to integrate them too. That's why it's seen as a marriage.
Yes, the shadow work, right?
Yeah. And you brought up the 666. 666 is for various Kabbalistic wonderful reasons, is associated with the sun itself and the heart chakra. Okay. And the beast 666, when applied to the that supernal triad order, that B666 is associated with that number 2 reflection. Okay, but anyway, we don't know what is or is not in our own best interest as far as our consciousness journey until we've made that marriage.
Yes.
Until we've received that and in Christian mysticism, that's called the Christ consciousness. Christ consciousness is the opening of the Anahat chakra. That's where the blending of our elemental fiveness here gets wedded to the macrocosmic thing that we try to look at as planetary spheres. It's an awakening. Okay, we've always been there. We're there right now. We're just dream talking with each other until we're there, and then you know what is or is not in your own best interest. In 13 something, there was a German magician called Abramelin the Mage.
I'm well aware. I've read his works.
And yeah, he was a great Kabbalist, and he was really a historical character. Okay, I mean, he was like the Henry Kissinger of various local potentates and stuff, and an alchemist. Yeah. The guy was a famous guy. Okay, and he had a couple sons, and he was a Jewish magician, and so to his eldest son, who everybody knows is the best guy in the family, he bequeathed the Kabbalah. But to his second son, Lamech, he said, "This is almost as good as the Kabbalah." Okay, so he wrote this book about his adventures, and a great sacred magic that was the key to all magic. And in those days, 1400s, in Europe, magic meant whipping up demons into a triangle. Yes. And bewitching your neighbor's cow and things like that. And he said, "No, this is big stuff. Okay, and I'm going to tell you." And he tells a story about going out to the Egyptian desert, and he meets this magician. The guy's Abraham the Jew. Excuse me if I called him Abramelin, because Abramelin is the magician he learned this from. Yes. So I misspoke there. And the guy said, "All of this magic is just total BS until you've wed this higher character. Yes. You've wed this real you. Okay, and until then, you don't know good magic from bad magic. You don't know you don't know what's in your best interest and what's not. So everything until you get that is going to be dangerous." So
I think a good way to relate this, especially to my viewers who might not be as informed, is that the higher self is what a lot of people refer to as this concept that you're talking about. You know, it's that it's the part of you that is aware of everything that you're not aware of, and knows what your best interests are. And once you are able to connect with the soul, with the heart, you're able to become aware of your own interests and the interests that help you, because your higher self is who you are rather than what you want to be.
Right. And the formula for that is kind of buried in the other medieval magic of whipping up demons. That process is sort of attempted in the invocation. Okay, you're supposed to do an invocation of deity, just like Solomon did. Well, what that actually means, a true invocation is you uniting with that.
Integration of shadow. Yep.
Right. And uh, the Abramelin operation called it the Holy Guardian Angel, which is kind of a stupid name for it, actually, but in a way, it's just absolutely perfect because all of us have a certain visceral yearning to become one by uniting with something that we temporarily think is our opposite.
I agree.
So that's where the imagery and the metaphors of lovemaking and ecstasy and that come in. And when that pops off, when the heart chakra is totally open, that's when the bliss involved just sets a poet crazy with stuff. You see it happening in Rumi and Hafez and what they would call the ecstatic mystics. In more recent times, you see it at work in Ramakrishna, Swami Ramakrishna, who is as wild and crazy in his own way as Aleister Crowley was in his. Okay, and he was sometimes he was a woman, sometimes he was a man, and he was in total devotional bliss to the Holy Mother, his wife. Even to call her a wife is is almost an insult, you know.
Yeah.
And he was a Crowley character. He was a beast, and the object of his desire was his scarlet woman. Just so many words. That's how Crowley would call it.
I've also noticed there's a fundamental desire to like reach out and find what you consider your opposite. For example, if you think of yourself as a demon internally, you're going to seek an angel of a woman or a man, whatever you're interested in, to be your equal, to fill you out, what you lack. And instead of that, it's more like once you've reached this point of entering the stages of enlightenment, I wouldn't say being enlightened because this is a part of the process, is that once you are aware of you thinking of yourself as being one thing or one side of a thing, that you're actually you have characteristics of both.
Right.
And meeting someone who fills out the characteristics that you lack of both sides is what gives you the whole perspective, rather than just trying to look at things as being whole things by themselves.
And you can imagine how that looks from the outside, how your neighbors look at that. You know, oh my God, that guy's crazy. But anyway, it's all extremely interesting. But ultimately, it's not something you study and or even practice. It has to be something you become. And but that's the conclusion most everybody comes to, you know, sooner or later. And so, but back to your first question, you know, I still do a pentagram ritual when I'm doing a class where we need to banish the room. You know, I still I do my own little meditation things. But there were years I did lots of stuff, you know, all the time.
Yeah.
But in a way, it was just I did it till I got a grasp of what it was I was trying to do by doing it. And then oh, okay.
That's a divide I've noticed in the community also. There's the theoretical people,
Right.
and there's the practitioners. And
Right.
the people who are theory crafters generally don't know what they're talking about until somebody who practices comes in and says, no, this is how this works, this is how this works, this is how that works, this is how it applies to real life.
Right.
And the person
Right.
who's doing theory is going to be like, what are you talking about? Like, and even the ancient philosophers knew if you try to pursue just an idea based on rationality alone, you will only lead yourself astray. You have to observe reality and apply what you think to reality to be able to stay on a true path.
Right. And then you just find yourself being rather than doing. And and you don't know when that happens. You don't. You're so close to yourself. You just you just wake up to it. Which is exactly, I guess, the term we should be using for all of it.
Waking up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.